I stepped into the dimly lit living room, the smell of fresh flowers mingling with the faint scent of old wood. The air was thick with tension, a weight that made it hard to breathe. My mom's funeral was supposed to be a time of mourning, of saying goodbye, but instead, it felt like the beginning of a war. People whispered in corners, their eyes darting nervously. A few relatives stood in groups, talking in hushed tones, but none of them dared look at me directly. I tried to steady myself. It wasn't easy. The grief was there, yes, but beneath it, something else simmered. Something sharper, more cutting. I didn't know if I was ready for what was coming, but I knew it had to happen. The reading of the will. As I walked toward the group, I caught sight of my brother, Jonathan, standing near the front of the room. He looked calm, collected, too calm. His eyes met mine, but there was no warmth, no recognition, just a coldness that made my stomach twist. Jonathan had always been that way, even when we were kids. The golden child, the one who never had to do the hard work, the one who got all the praise, the one who could do no wrong. And now, as we stood in our mother's house, he was about to get everything. I knew it. The lawyer, a stiff man with glasses perched at the end of his nose, cleared his throat and raised his hand for silence. The room fell still, the only sound the low hum of the air conditioning. It was as if everyone was holding their breath, waiting for the inevitable. "Carlene," the lawyer said, and I braced myself. My heart pounded in my chest. "We're starting with you." I held my breath, trying to stay calm, trying to keep my face neutral. The first words of the will were always important. I couldn't show any emotion, not yet. I hadn't even been able to look at my mom's final words until now, and I wasn't sure what I'd find. I had sacrificed so much for this family, given up pieces of myself just to be seen, and now I had to know if it meant anything at all. But as the lawyer continued, reading line after line of my mother's wishes, a sinking feeling began to settle in. When the lawyer got to the part about the inheritance, I could feel every eye in the room on me, every single person waiting for me to react. But I didn't. "Carlene," the lawyer said, "you're not mentioned." For a moment, I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My mind went blank, the words echoing in my ears. Not mentioned. How could this be? The woman I had cared for, the woman who was my mother, had left me out. My brother's smirk was the only thing I could focus on. Jonathan, standing tall with that smug look on his face, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. He didn't even flinch. He didn't seem to care that I was standing there, my world crumbling. "Carlene, you're not part of the will," he said, his voice cold. Mom made sure of that. A hush fell over the room, and I could feel the eyes of everyone on me. The words swirled in my mind, too much to process. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but instead, I stayed silent. I forced myself to breathe, to take it in. This wasn't the time for emotion. But the silence stretched on, suffocating. The shock, the hurt, the betrayal, it all began to rise up inside me, and I could feel the edges of my composure start to crack. I glanced around at the faces in the room, the people who were supposed to be my family. Some looked uncomfortable, others seemed almost relieved. No one dared meet my eyes. I wanted to shout, to demand answers, but I couldn't. Not here, not now. With shaky hands, I stood up. My legs felt like jelly, but somehow I found the strength to walk out of the room. The sound of my footsteps echoed in the silence, the door creaking as I left. I needed to get away, to think, to breathe. I didn't know where I was going, but I needed space. Space to let everything sink in. As I walked out into the hall, I felt the cold air hit my face. It was like I had just stepped out of a fog into a reality I wasn't ready for. I found myself in my mother's room. I hadn't been in here since she passed, and seeing it now was like stepping into the past. The same familiar scent, the same worn furniture, her chair by the window. I sat down on the edge of the bed and put my head in my hands. The tears came then, a flood of emotion I couldn't stop. Betrayal, hurt, anger, they all mixed together. I had given everything to this family, and this was how they repaid me? By erasing me from the will? But it wasn't just about the money. It was about everything. All those years of sacrifice, of being there when no one else was. It was about the love I had given, the loyalty. And now, it felt like none of it mattered. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. How had it come to this? My brother, the golden child, had done it. I had always known it, but now it was real. It wasn't just a feeling, it was a fact. And as I sat there, the tears still wet on my face, I realized something. This wasn't over. I couldn't let it be. I had to confront him. I had to confront the family. It wasn't just about what I had lost, it was about what I was going to reclaim. My phone buzzed. I wiped my tears and checked it. The screen flashed with a message from an unknown number. Your brother's been hiding more than just money. You might want to look into this. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. What did this mean? What was he hiding? I took a deep breath. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. I sat there, in the same place where everything had fallen apart. The funeral, my brother's betrayal, the will that erased me. It all felt like a cruel joke. The silence in the room had been deafening, but now it was just me, alone with my thoughts. I couldn't shake the image of Jonathan's smug face, standing there, reading the will as if it were some kind of victory for him. The satisfaction in his eyes when he said, "I was cut out," as if it were nothing more than a game. The anger rose again, hot and fierce, but beneath it, there was something else. Something quieter, more controlled. I had been a fool to trust them, all of them. My brother, my family. They never saw me, never appreciated everything I had done for them. My phone buzzed, snapping me out of my thoughts. I glanced down, still holding my breath, as if the device might be a reminder of everything I had lost. I didn't recognize the number, and a chill ran down my spine. The message was short and cryptic. Your brother's been hiding more than just money. You might want to look into this. I stared at the screen, my heart racing. Who could this be? Was this some sort of cruel joke, or was it something more? The words felt like a lifeline, something that could explain it all, but also something that could make everything worse. I couldn't tell if this was the break I'd been waiting for, or just another lie. For a moment, I debated deleting it, ignoring it. I was done with my family, done with all their games. But then I remembered Jonathan's smug face, the way he looked at me in that moment. No, this wasn't just about money. This was about my dignity. I couldn't ignore it. Not now. But where did I even begin? The thought of trusting someone else felt like a trap. Maybe the message was just a setup, a way to manipulate me further. I couldn't afford to fall into that again. I needed to be smart. I needed to know who sent this message and why. As I sat there, the weight of it all pressing down on me, I found myself reflecting on what had happened. The years of sacrifice, the years of being left in the shadows, the constant feeling that I wasn't really part of the family. I had spent so much time trying to make up for something I could never fix, trying to prove that I was worthy. But all it had gotten me was erased from the will. I had to know the truth. I had to find out what Jonathan was hiding. The phone buzzed again, pulling me from my thoughts. A new message, this one from the same unknown number. He's got secrets. You don't even know the half of it. I stood up, walking to the small desk by the window. I needed to do something, anything to take control. The room felt small, suffocating, like the walls were closing in on me. The only thing that made sense now was finding out what my brother had been hiding, what he had been doing behind my back. I needed answers. The thought of confronting Jonathan head-on was tempting, but I couldn't afford to make a mistake, not with everything at stake. The message wasn't enough. I needed more, something concrete, something to make sure this wasn't just a game. I reached for the stack of old family documents on the table, pulling out a few random papers, bank statements, tax returns. My hands trembled as I flicked through them. Most of it was old news, things I had seen 1,000 times before, but something caught my eye, a strange transaction on one of the bank statements. Payments to an account I didn't recognize, large sums of money sent from an account linked to my mother's name, but there were no explanations, no record of what it was for. I felt the blood drain from my face. What the hell was this? I couldn't shake the feeling that I had stumbled onto something big, something that connected all the dots. I kept scrolling through the pages, but everything felt blurry. The more I looked, the more confused I became. But the pattern was there. My brother had been keeping secrets from me for years. Secrets that had led to this, to the will, to the betrayal. The pain of it all started to overwhelm me, but I didn't let it show. Not anymore. This was the moment I had been waiting for, even if I hadn't known it until now. I wasn't going to sit by and let this continue. I couldn't, not with everything I had discovered. My phone buzzed again. Another message from the anonymous number. "You're on the right track. Keep digging." I read the message twice. It felt like a confirmation, but also a warning. Whoever this was, they knew more than they were letting on. But it didn't matter. I had to find out the truth. I turned back to the papers, the pieces of the puzzle slowly coming together. My hands weren't trembling anymore. I was focused, determined. The feeling of betrayal was still there, but now it was mixed with something else. Power. The realization that I could take control. I wasn't just a victim in this story. I could change the narrative, but as I sifted through the documents, I came across something unexpected. A letter, hidden between the papers. I didn't recognize the handwriting, but I knew immediately who it was from. My mother. I opened the envelope slowly, my heart pounding. The letter was brief, but it felt like a punch to the gut. My mother had been planning to make me the beneficiary of a specific asset, something I had no idea about. But my brother had secretly altered the documents before her death. It was all there, written in her own hand. She had tried to leave me something important, but Jonathan had stolen it from me. I sat back in the chair, my head spinning. This wasn't just about the inheritance. It wasn't just about money. This was about control. Power. And my brother had been using me as a pawn the entire time. I wasn't going to let it stand. I couldn't. I thought about the years I had spent trying to keep the peace, trying to be the good daughter. But it was clear now. I had been nothing more than a tool for my brother to use. I was done. I was done being invisible, done being overlooked. I was going to confront him. I had to. I picked up my phone again and typed out a message, a simple request for a meeting. I wasn't sure if he would respond, but I didn't care. This wasn't about him anymore. This was about me. As I hit send, I felt a surge of power. I wasn't waiting anymore. I was taking charge. And then my phone buzzed again. The message from my brother was short, almost too casual. It simply read, "I know you've been looking into things. Don't get in over your head. I'll be in touch." I stared at the message, feeling a chill run down my spine. This wasn't just about money. It was something deeper. And my brother was more dangerous than I had ever realized. The house felt the same, still, heavy with memories, as if time had decided to suspend itself the moment my mother passed. The scent of old wood and lavender, a perfume she used to wear, lingered in the corners of the rooms. Nothing had changed since that day, and yet everything was different. The house was supposed to feel comforting, familiar. But now, it felt like a tomb. I stood in the living room, my fingers brushing lightly over the dusty photo frames on the mantel. My childhood home. The place where my brother and I had grown up, where my mother had made a home for us. It should have been a sanctuary. But now, all it did was remind me of how long I had been invisible. The weight of the betrayal hung over me like a dark cloud. It was a feeling I couldn't shake, no matter how hard I tried. I had spent so many years working, sacrificing, believing that if I just kept doing what was expected, things would eventually change. But they hadn't. The truth had always been there, hidden in plain sight, and I had just been too blind to see it. "Carlene?" The voice made me jump, and I turned to find Aunt Meredith standing in the doorway. She wasn't supposed to be here. But then again, this house wasn't really mine anymore, was it? Not after everything had gone down with my brother. Aunt Meredith had always been a mystery to me. She was my mother's sister, but I had never really known her. She had left when I was young, citing family troubles as her reason. I had often wondered what had happened between her and my mom, but it had never felt like the right time to ask. Now it seemed like that time had come. Her eyes were soft, but there was something guarded in the way she looked at me, something I couldn't place. "I didn't expect to see you here," I said, my voice flat. "I came to check on you," she replied, her voice thick with something unspoken. I nodded, not sure how to respond. We stood there in silence for a moment, the tension between us palpable. She didn't move, and neither did I. It was as if we were both waiting for the other to speak, to break the silence that had stretched on for too long. Finally, she sighed. You were always the one who kept things together, you know that? I didn't answer her, not sure what she meant. Keeping things together had always been my role. Keeping the peace, keeping the family functioning, it had always been me. But now, with the will and everything that followed, it felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. Meredith stepped into the room, her movements slow, measured. She seemed different, older, wiser, maybe. You don't know everything, Carlene, she said, her voice low. What do you mean? I asked, my heart racing. She hesitated, glancing at the family photos that lined the walls. Your brother, he's always been more controlling than you realized. And your mother, she wasn't as innocent as you think. Her words hit me like a slap. My brother had always been manipulative, but hearing it from someone else made the truth feel even worse. I had seen it in his eyes at the funeral, the way he had treated me. But to hear that it had gone on for years, behind closed doors, it was too much. I don't understand, I whispered, my hands trembling. Your mother, she had plans. She was going to leave you everything. I shook my head, the words not making sense. She left everything to Jonathan. I saw the will. Meredith's eyes darkened. That's not what she wanted. Your brother. He made sure you weren't in it. I blinked, trying to process her words. What do you mean? Meredith took a step forward, lowering her voice. She was going to leave you the house, the business. He made sure to change everything before she passed. He took it all, and you never knew. Neither of us knew. I took a step back, my mind reeling. Why didn't you tell me? I tried, Meredith said, her eyes filled with regret. But your mother, she was too proud. She didn't want to make waves. She didn't want to burden you. I felt a knot in my stomach. Everything I had known, everything I thought I understood, was falling apart. My mother had known what Jonathan was doing. She had been planning to leave me everything, but he had taken it all. For the first time, I realized how deeply I had been betrayed, not just by Jonathan, but by my own mother. The tears I had been holding back began to swell, but I didn't let them fall. Not here. Not now. I needed to focus. I had to. Meredith's voice broke through my thoughts. There's more, Carlene. You need to understand, your brother didn't just take the money. He took control of everything. What do you mean, control? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. After your father died, your mother, she wasn't the same. She was vulnerable. Your brother saw that. And he used it. Manipulated her into giving him everything, even though she didn't want to. I felt my heart sink. The pieces were starting to fit together. My mother had been manipulated, and I had been too blind to see it. Jonathan had always been a master at controlling things. But to do it to her, to make her doubt herself, to twist her intentions. Suddenly, everything clicked. The will, the way my brother had treated me, the sudden changes in my mother's behavior in the last few years of her life, it was all connected. I looked at Meredith, the weight of everything crashing down on me. I can't let this go, can I? No, she said, her voice hard with finality. You can't. Not now. Not after what he's done. I turned away, my mind spinning. I couldn't just sit back and let him get away with this. It wasn't just about money. It was about my place in the family. It was about my life. I couldn't let him win. That's when I heard it. A noise from the attic. It was faint, but it was there. A creak, a rustling, as if someone was up there. My breath caught in my throat. I hadn't left the attic door open. And then I heard footsteps. The attic was dim, the air thick with dust as I stepped inside once again. The floor creaked under my weight, a sound that echoed through the empty house. It had been weeks since I had last been here, and yet the place felt so familiar. Too familiar. The boxes were stacked high, some of them labeled, others simply left to be forgotten. I hadn't planned on returning, not yet, but something had been gnawing at me. A need to dig deeper, to uncover what I hadn't been able to see before. I set the flashlight down on the floor, letting its beam illuminate the corners of the room. I could feel the weight of the years pressing down on me, the memories that had been buried beneath everything else. Mom's handwriting on the boxes, the faded photo albums, all of it felt like a time capsule of a life that had long passed. But this time, I wasn't just looking for keepsakes. I was looking for answers. My hands shook slightly as I picked up a folder labeled Mom Business. The dust on it was thick, and it hadn't been touched in years. My fingers trembled as I opened it, revealing receipts, letters, and bank statements that made my stomach churn. There were transfers, amounts that didn't make sense, payments to accounts I'd never heard of. My mother had always handled the family finances herself, but this was something different. I felt my pulse quicken. The documents weren't just inconspicuous, they were disturbing. What had Mom been hiding? And more importantly, why had she kept this from me? Among the papers, something caught my eye. A small voice recorder, buried at the bottom of the folder. My mother's old jewelry box. It had never stood out before, but now, it was all I could focus on. I picked it up, my fingers trembling with a mix of curiosity and dread. It was an odd thing to find, but I didn't hesitate. I hit play. Her voice crackled through the speaker, soft and gentle. "I love you, Carlene. I want you safe." My heart lurched, but before I could digest her words, the recorder clicked again, and my brother's voice filled the room, sharp and commanding. "You need to change the paperwork, Mom," he was saying. "You're giving her too much. It's not fair." My mother's voice came next, strained. "I can't. I don't want to do this. It's not right, Jonathan." The recording stopped abruptly, leaving nothing but the echo of the silence. My mind raced. That wasn't just a conversation. That was a plea. My brother had pressured Mom into something, and I had been kept in the dark, as always. I stared at the recorder, still in my hands, the weight of its contents sinking in. My mother's words echoed in my mind. She had been fighting something bigger than I had understood, something I couldn't see before. The truth about the will, the truth about everything, it wasn't just about inheritance. It was about control, manipulation. I sat down on the dusty floor, the pieces of the puzzle clicking together in my mind. My brother wasn't just greedy, he was ruthless. And my mother had known. Had she been forced into this? Did she really want to leave everything to me, only to have him rip it away? The questions burned, but I had no answers. Just more pieces to the story that I wasn't ready to face. I closed my eyes, breathing deeply, trying to regain some semblance of control. This wasn't just about the money. It was about everything I had sacrificed for a family that had never truly seen me. As I sat there, the weight of it all felt unbearable. The house, the past, the betrayal, it all came crashing down at once. I could feel the anger rising in my chest, but there was something else too, a determination. A quiet resolve that had been building ever since I first heard that text message. I needed answers, and now I had them. I spent the next few hours poring over the papers I had found, but nothing gave me the clarity I needed. The more I looked, the more I realized that my brother had been at the center of all of this, and it wasn't just about the will. It was about my place in the family. He had manipulated everything, and now he would pay for it. But I couldn't do this alone. I needed help. I needed someone who could give me the truth, someone who had been on the inside. I reached for my phone and dialed Aunt Meredith's number. She picked up on the second ring. "Carlene?" Her voice was hesitant, cautious. "Aunt Meredith, I need to talk," I said, the words coming out more urgent than I intended. "There's more to this than I thought. I need you to be honest with me, about my brother, about Mom, about everything." There was a long pause before she answered. "I've always told you to be careful, Carlene. Your brother, he's dangerous. But you're not ready to hear it." "I'm ready," I replied, my voice firm. "I need to know everything." "I'll come over," she said, her tone serious. "But you have to promise me something. You have to be prepared for what you're going to hear." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "I'm ready." As I hung up, I glanced back at the attic door. The shadows outside seemed deeper, darker, as if the house itself was holding its breath. I knew something was wrong, and I knew it was only going to get worse, but I couldn't back down now. I had come too far. I was about to confront the past I had been running from, and there was no turning back. I paused, hearing something in the distance. The faintest sound, a creak from the floorboards above. I turned sharply, my breath caught in my throat. The attic door had shifted slightly, as though someone had just walked in. I wasn't alone anymore. The quiet of the night was shattered by a faint creak above. I had been lying in bed, trying to calm my mind, when I heard it. The attic door, once firmly closed, was now ajar. I froze, the blood in my veins turning cold. My heart pounded in my chest, the pulse thudding against my eardrums. I grabbed a flashlight off the nightstand, my hand trembling, and then reached for the kitchen knife lying on the counter. My body was on autopilot, every nerve screaming as I tiptoed towards the attic stairs. I had no idea what I might find up there, but something told me I wasn't going to like it. My breath caught in my throat as I climbed the stairs, the weight of fear pressing down on me with each step. When I reached the attic, I found the place just as I had left it, dark, musty, and empty. But something was wrong. There were papers scattered across the floor. Some of the boxes had been disturbed, and one important file was missing. The folder marked Mom Business was gone. I felt a surge of panic grip me. Someone had been here. Someone knew what I had found. My mind raced with terrifying possibilities. Was it my brother? Had he finally realized that I was onto him? I didn't waste another second. I grabbed my phone and called Aunt Meredith. My voice was unsteady when she answered, but I forced myself to sound calm. "Aunt Meredith? Someone's been in the house. I don't know what they were looking for, but the folder, it's gone. The one with all the financial stuff about Mom. I think I'm being watched." Her voice on the other end was tight, filled with concern. "Get out of there. Don't stay another night. Go somewhere safe, Carlene. I can't stress this enough. You have no idea what you're up against." I felt a chill run down my spine. "I'll go to a motel. I just need to—" "Carlene, don't think too much. Just get out of that house. For your own safety." Her words echoed in my mind as I hung up. The adrenaline was still coursing through my veins, but I knew she was right. I couldn't stay in that house any longer. Not after everything I had uncovered. I grabbed a few things, threw them into a bag, and left the house behind. The drive to the motel felt like an eternity, my thoughts racing. As I pulled into the parking lot, the weight of what I had found in the attic began to settle on me. What was I doing? Was this even worth it? Was it worth digging deeper into something that seemed to be getting more dangerous by the minute? I checked into a room and sat on the bed, staring at the walls. I wasn't sure what I expected to find, but it sure as hell wasn't this. I had spent my entire life trying to please people who didn't even see me. My brother's manipulation, my mother's silence, it all felt like a crushing weight that I couldn't escape from. As I sat there in the dim light, the memories came flooding back. High school. My brother laughing and saying I'd never be strong enough to run the family business. The words felt like a knife now, sharper than ever. He had always seen me as weak, and that was exactly what he had counted on all these years. I grabbed the recorder from my bag, the one with my mother's voice on it. The words she had said, the ones that played over and over in my head, came back to me now. "I want you safe." I could still hear the desperation in her voice, the plea she had made to my brother, trying to get him to understand. He had only wanted more, and she had given in. My phone buzzed, pulling me from my thoughts. It was the lawyer. I hesitated before picking up, unsure of what he might say. "Carlene?" His voice was low, hesitant. "There was another will, an older one. Your name was in it. It was replaced a month before your mother's health took a sharp decline. The signatures, the dates, they don't match. It's all wrong." My stomach twisted. I pressed for more details, desperate for anything that could explain what had happened. "When was it changed? Who was there?" The lawyer's voice dropped even lower. "I don't know, but I think we need to talk in person. This might be bigger than you think." I knew he was right. This wasn't just about a will anymore. It was about something far more dangerous. My mother had been manipulated, her will altered, and my brother had orchestrated it all. I hung up the phone, the weight of the situation sinking in. There was no turning back now. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. I began printing out everything I could find: bank statements, property deeds, and any records I could get my hands on. I saved copies to my phone, emailed myself the timeline of all the changes in the family's estate. I was building a paper trail, one that I could use if I needed to take legal action. But there was something deeper at play here. My safety, my life, it wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about protecting myself from the man I had called my brother. I took a deep breath and picked up the phone again. This time, I was texting him. "I know what you did. We both know Mom didn't want this. I'm giving you a chance to come clean before someone else finds out." I pressed send and stared at the screen, waiting for a reply. Minutes passed. Hours. Nothing. Then, just as I thought I might relax for a moment, a knock at the door startled me. I jumped up, my heart racing. I moved toward the door, cautiously peeking through the peephole. No one was there. But on the floor, an envelope was slid under the door. I picked it up, my fingers trembling. Inside was a printed photo of me, staring back at me with the caption, "You're not safe when you dig too deep." My blood ran cold. This was no longer just about the will. This was about silencing the truth. It was personal now. I showed it to the motel clerk, but he only offered a nervous shrug. "You should call the cops," he said, his voice shaking. But I wasn't ready for that yet, not until I had more leverage. I called Aunt Meredith, explaining what had happened. "You have to be careful, Carlene," she warned. "If you stand down now, they win. But if you keep going, it's going to get worse, much worse." I felt a surge of determination. I couldn't back down now. Not after everything I had uncovered. I stared at the photo one last time before tossing it into the sink. Then I lit a match and watched as the edges burned, the image crumbling away into ash. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about everyone who had been silenced. And I wasn't going to stop until the truth came out. The morning after I received that damning letter, I stood in front of the attorney's office, my hands clenched around the papers that could change everything. I had the proof, the older version of my mother's will, with my name clearly written in it. The signatures were different, the dates suspiciously off. But there it was in black and white. My mother's intentions had been altered, just before her health took a turn. As I sat in the attorney's office, I could feel the gravity of the moment weighing on me. "This is the smoking gun," I said, placing the document on the table. My heart hammered in my chest as I waited for him to say something, anything, that would give me the reassurance I so desperately needed. The lawyer's brow furrowed as he scanned the will. "This isn't right, Carlene," he said, his voice tight with concern. "These changes were made very close to the end. Signatures differ. Some witnesses are missing." I don't like this. I could feel the coldness of betrayal sinking in deeper. All the pieces were falling into place. My brother had orchestrated this, and he wasn't going to get away with it. "I need to confront them. I need them to know I'm not backing down," I said, the words coming out with a clarity I hadn't known I possessed. It was time to make my move, to stop being a passive victim in a story that was never mine to begin with. I was no longer the quiet, overlooked daughter. The lawyer nodded, his expression unreadable. "Be careful. I'm just saying, this is bigger than you think. You might be stirring something dangerous." "I'm not backing down," I said, the words coming out stronger than I had expected. "I won't be erased again." The meeting with Delmar and Jolene was set for the next day. I invited them to lunch, knowing that this was the moment. The moment I would confront them with the truth, the evidence that they couldn't ignore. I had a feeling it would be explosive, but I didn't care anymore. I wasn't going to let them spin their lies any longer. The lunch was held at the family's old house. It wasn't ideal, but it was familiar, and I needed that sense of control. I had the documents ready, proof of the will change, the proof that I was meant to be included. As I entered the room, I could feel the tension rising, thick in the air. Delmar's eyes met mine, cold and calculating. Jolene sat quietly, her face pale, her hands shaking ever so slightly. "Here it is," I said, sliding the documents across the table. "The truth." There was a long silence as they both examined the papers, and then Delmar stood up, his face twisting in anger. "This is absurd," he spat, his voice rising. "You think we're just going to let you walk in here and accuse me of something? This is a load of garbage!" Jolene's voice was quieter, but no less biting. "You don't know what you're talking about. You've misinterpreted everything. You're not even supposed to be here." I stood my ground, refusing to let them intimidate me. I felt my hands tremble, but I kept my voice steady. "You can twist the facts all you want, but the truth is here, right in front of you, and I'm not going to let you erase me again." I felt a strange sense of power, a clarity I hadn't felt before. This wasn't just about the inheritance anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my place in a family that had always pushed me to the side. And I wasn't going to stand for it anymore. The room was quiet for a moment, the weight of my words hanging in the air. Delmar, still seething, glared at me, but there was a flicker of something else in his eyes. Fear. He knew I had him now, but the backlash came quickly. Delmar and Jolene wasted no time in launching a full-scale character attack. Delmar's voice boomed as he accused me of leaking documents, of misrepresenting the original will. He threw out lies, spinning the narrative in every direction to make me seem like the villain. "You think you're so clever, don't you?" he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "You're just an opportunist, Carlene. You've been playing us all along, trying to take what's mine." Jolene, though quieter, joined in. "Everyone's been talking. You've been digging for things that don't concern you. People are saying you're doing this for money, for control. This isn't about the family anymore. This is all about you." I didn't flinch. I refused to give them the satisfaction. "Let the facts speak for themselves," I said firmly. "I'm done with your lies." Some of the guests in the room shifted uncomfortably, murmuring amongst themselves. Some were clearly on my side. Others looked unsure. Aunt Meredith watched from the corner, her eyes filled with sorrow. She could see through the charade, but she, too, was trapped in the web they had woven. As the tension in the room simmered, I realized something important. This wasn't just about proving I was right. It was about surviving the personal attack. It wasn't enough to have the truth on my side. I had to withstand the damage they were trying to do to me. That night, I found myself back at my motel, staring into the dark. The weight of everything that had happened crushed down on me. The insults, the accusations, they all piled up like a heavy burden I didn't know if I could bear. Was this worth it? Was exposing this worth the humiliation? The question gnawed at me, the shame threatening to pull me under. But then I remembered my mother's voice. "Strength doesn't always roar." Her words echoed in my mind. It was a message I had heard 1,000 times, but now it was clearer than ever. Strength wasn't about screaming the loudest. It was about standing firm, even when everything seemed to be crumbling around you. I couldn't walk away. I couldn't let them win. I reached for the phone and made another call. Aunt Meredith answered, her voice filled with concern. "Are you okay?" "I will be," I said, my voice steady. "I'm not backing down. I'm going to finish this." It was time to gather my allies. The next move was clear. I would make sure the truth came to light, no matter the cost. As I sat in my motel room, I prepared for what was coming next. I had to be strategic, I had to be smart, and I had to be prepared for anything. Then, just as I thought I might get some rest, a certified letter arrived, slid under my door. I opened it, my hands trembling. The words leaped off the page: cease and desist. It wasn't over, not by a long shot. I sat across from my brother and the lawyer, a cold, sleek table between us. The office was so modern, so impersonal, it made my insides twist. The view outside, glass skyscrapers, bustling streets, felt like a world I didn't belong to. I was here for one thing and one thing only: the truth. My mother's truth. The lawyer, a man I hardly knew but who had been handling my mother's estate for years, shuffled the papers in front of him. The folder was thick, heavy with secrets, and I could feel the weight of it bearing down on me. "Let's proceed with the reading of the will," the lawyer said, his voice as flat as the polished desk in front of us. I looked at Delmar, my brother. His arms were crossed, his posture arrogant, like he already knew everything that was coming. His gaze never left me, but there was something in his eyes. something that flickered between disdain and fear. The lawyer began reading, but I barely heard the words. All I could focus on was the paper in my hand. My name had been in the original will. I knew that for sure. But that was before the changes, the lies, the manipulations. Then, the lawyer paused, glancing up at me. "There's an additional clause," he said, as if he were trying to tread carefully. "It seems that your mother required you to prove your worthiness to inherit a certain family heirloom. Your brother Delmar was named executor with discretion over this matter." My heart dropped. A part of me didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was there. The words were unmistakable. She wouldn't have done this to me, I thought, my mind racing. She wouldn't have asked him to be the judge of my worth. Delmar smirked, clearly enjoying the discomfort in the room. The smugness on his face was a mask, but I could see the satisfaction in his eyes. The power he wielded over me, over this family, was intoxicating. "I'm just doing what Mom wanted," he said, his voice too calm, too rehearsed. "She wanted to make sure you were truly committed to the family before handing over something this important." I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I let the weight of the words sink in. I knew what he was doing. He was manipulating her final wishes to suit his needs, twisting the meaning, adding layers of deceit to a situation that didn't need to be this way. "No, Delmar," I finally said, standing tall. "You're lying. This was never her intention. You twisted everything for your own gain. I won't let you get away with this." Delmar's smirk faltered for a brief second, but he recovered quickly. "You're out of line, Carlene. You don't know what you're talking about." "Let's make one thing clear," I said, my voice steady but firm. "I'm not just some pawn in your game. I won't let you control me or her memory anymore." The lawyer watched the exchange with growing concern, but it was Delmar who reacted first. "You think you're the one who's right? You think this is about some damn will?" he snapped. "You've always been selfish, Carlene, always playing the victim, always wanting what wasn't yours. This is your fault. Don't come in here pretending like you're the victim now." His words stung, but they didn't hurt as much as I thought they would. I wasn't that girl anymore, the one who took the blame for everything, who let him walk all over her. No, now I was a woman who knew what she had to do, even if it meant standing up to the brother I once tried to protect. I leaned forward, placing the papers down between us. "No, Delmar," I said, my voice calm but cutting through the tension like a knife. "I'm not the one who's been lying to the family. You manipulated everything. You've always wanted to be the one in control, and you'll stop at nothing to get it." There was a long silence. For a moment, it felt like time itself had stopped. Delmar's face flushed, his eyes narrowing into slits, but I saw something else there too. Fear. He knew I had him. He knew he couldn't spin his way out of this anymore. The lawyer broke the silence. "Actually, there are additional documents that may change things further," he said, his voice now serious. He reached into the folder and pulled out more papers. "These were prepared before your mother's illness worsened. I've compared them to the final version of the will, and it's clear that the wording was manipulated. Your brother's name was inserted as executor just before your mother's health declined. That's when the changes were made." I stared at the lawyer in disbelief. My heart raced as everything fell into place. Delmar had altered the will, ensuring that I would be excluded. He had forced my mother into making changes, playing on her vulnerabilities, and I had been left in the dark. "You twisted her words for your gain," I said, my voice trembling with the truth. "I won't let you get away with this." Delmar's expression faltered, but he quickly recovered. He tried to speak, but no words came. I wasn't done yet. The lawyer gathered the documents, and for the first time, he addressed Delmar directly. "I'll be taking steps to amend the will. The changes made were not legal, and your position as executor will be revoked. I will ensure the correct version is put into effect." For a moment, it felt like victory was within reach, but the cost of this fight was heavy. I had uncovered the truth, but the weight of it threatened to crush me. As I left the lawyer's office, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. Justice had been served, but at what price? I had exposed my brother's treachery, But I'd also uncovered a deep well of pain, years of betrayal, manipulation, and family secrets that would take far longer to heal than the will itself. But before I could let the relief wash over me, my phone buzzed with a message. It was from an unknown number. The text was brief, but its implications were enough to send a chill down my spine. Your mother kept another secret. You might want to look into it. The world around me seemed to freeze. I knew then that this was far from over. The truth I had uncovered was only the beginning. The truth was just the beginning. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting a soft golden glow over the family estate. The sprawling garden, once a place of laughter and shared memories, now felt cold and alien to me. The hedges loomed high around us, and the distant sound of birdsong only made the silence more oppressive. Every step I took felt like a beat in the heart of the moment. This was it. This was the moment I had fought for. I walked slowly toward the stone pillar where Delmar stood. He looked casual, almost too comfortable in the space that once belonged to both of us. His arms were crossed, a smirk on his face as he leaned against the cool stone, eyes watching me approach. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, but I wasn't afraid. I had spent too many years being afraid. Not anymore. This was my fight, and I was going to finish it. This is it, I thought, taking a deep breath. Everything I've been through has led me to this point. I'm not backing down. As I reached him, I held his gaze, trying to steady the storm inside me. I know what you've done, Delmar, I said, my voice steady, but the words cut through the air like a blade. And I'm not going to let you walk away with it. For a moment, he didn't speak, just looked at me as if he was savoring the tension between us. Then, that smug smile returned. You're not in control here, Carlene. Never were, but I'm sure you've figured that out by now. I ignored his taunt, pulling the folder from my bag. I opened it slowly, watching his face tighten as I laid out the evidence. The legal documents, the recordings, everything I had gathered over the past months. I placed them in front of him, one by one. You manipulated everything, Delmar, I said, my voice cold. You changed the will. You twisted Mom's wishes for your own gain, and now it's time for you to admit it. He stared at the papers, his calm exterior beginning to crack. You don't know what you're talking about, he spat, his voice rising. I did what was right, what Mom wanted. This is all part of her final decision, and you're not going to turn this around. The lawyer, who had been standing by, observing the exchange, stepped forward. Delmar, that's not true, he interjected, his voice firm. The changes you made were not legal. They were forged, and you know it. My heart leaped as the lawyer slid more papers across the table. The signatures don't match. The changes were made just before your mother's health declined. This was all you. Delmar's face turned pale as the reality of his actions hit him. His mouth opened, but no words came out. The control he once had over this situation was slipping away, and he could feel it. You've been playing me and everyone else, I said, stepping forward, my voice gaining strength. But this is where it ends. You can't hide anymore. The truth is out. Delmar's composure finally faltered. He took a step back, eyes flashing with anger. You've always been the screw-up, the one no one cared about, he shouted, his voice rising in desperation. This isn't just about money, Carlene. It's about you, always thinking you were the one who deserved everything. Well, you don't. I stood tall, refusing to let his words break me. You're right, I said, my voice calm. But I've learned that it's not about what I was. It's about who I'm going to be. And you don't get to control me anymore. I could see the anger in his eyes, the frustration as he struggled to keep up his facade. But he was losing. He knew it, and I knew it. He wasn't going to win this time. Suddenly, in a fit of rage, Delmar lunged forward, grabbing my arm with force. The action was so sudden, I didn't have time to react, but I stood firm, refusing to let him intimidate me any longer. Get off me, I said, my voice low but resolute. For a moment, he seemed stunned, like he wasn't sure whether to fight or flee. His grip loosened, and I pulled my arm free, stepping back. I looked him in the eye, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders as I finally found my voice. "You've lost," I said quietly. "I'm taking what's rightfully mine." I walked past him, moving toward the lawyer. Delmar remained silent, his arrogant demeanor now gone, replaced by the quiet hum of defeat. I didn't look back. As I approached the lawyer, I saw a few family members standing nearby, watching the entire exchange. Some of them looked surprised, others sympathetic, and some appeared conflicted. But none of them spoke. They had seen Delmar for who he truly was now, and they weren't sure how to react. The lawyer nodded as I stepped beside him. "We'll begin the process now," he said. "The truth is out. Your mother's wishes will be honored." I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside me. For the first time in years, I felt like I could finally breathe. But just as I turned to leave, I heard Delmar shout, "You're nothing without me! You'll always be the same!" His words were hollow, meant to hurt, but they didn't. I had already taken back what was mine. I had won. As I walked away, the air felt different, lighter, freer. But there was a sadness, too. I had fought for the truth, for my mother's legacy. But the cost had been steep. The family I once thought I knew was gone. I had my inheritance back, but it wasn't just about money. It was about dignity. It was about being seen. And for once, I wasn't going to let anyone erase me. But just as I was about to leave the estate, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, and the screen showed an unknown number. I hesitated before answering, but the voice on the other end made my stomach drop. "I know what your brother did, but there's more. There's something he didn't want you to find." The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as the weight of those words sank in. "What could possibly be worse than everything I've already uncovered?" I whispered to myself, the fear creeping back in. The quiet of the morning hung heavy in the air. The sunlight filtered softly through the windows, casting long, lazy shadows on the floor. I sat alone in the family room, my thoughts a tangled mess of relief, sorrow, and anticipation. The weight of everything I'd fought for was finally beginning to settle within me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was still something left to uncover. "It's almost over," I whispered to myself, the words barely audible. I had been through so much to reach this point, but now I had to face the future. It felt like the calm before a storm, but this time, I was in control. The past had been a prison, its walls closing in on me for far too long. I thought of my mother, of the years spent quietly suffering, the betrayal, the lies, but I had won. I had fought for justice, and now, for the first time, I was free to move on. But what came next? Could I really leave the past behind me, or would it always have a grip on me? I've spent so much time fighting for what was mine. Now I have to fight for my peace, I thought. It wasn't just about the inheritance anymore. It was about reclaiming my own sense of self. My phone buzzed, cutting through my thoughts. It was a message from the lawyer, asking me to meet him one last time. This was it, the final step in closing the chapter. I took a deep breath, stood up, and made my way to the lawyer's office. The office was as immaculate as always. The sleek, modern design felt cold, almost too sterile. But today, it didn't bother me. I sat down across from the lawyer, feeling a strange sense of calm. "The documents are finalized," he said, his voice neutral but reassuring. "The changes your brother made have been officially nullified. You're the rightful heir now, Carlene." I let the words sink in, the finality of it all. The estate, the assets, everything my mother had worked for was now back in my hands. I glanced at the lawyer, who handed me the official papers, confirming everything. It was over, but it wasn't just about the money. It was about the truth. It was about proving that I mattered, that I wasn't just some afterthought in my family's story. "You've got what's yours," the lawyer said, breaking the silence. "Now we'll work on getting everything properly transferred." I nodded, still processing the weight of it all. I wasn't sure if I felt relieved or angry, but I knew I was ready to move forward. As I left the office, I could feel the eyes of family members watching me. Some were supportive, others still caught in their loyalties. But I didn't need their approval anymore. I had reclaimed what was mine, and nothing would change that. Delmar stood off to the side, trying to regain some sense of control. His usual arrogance was gone, replaced by the quiet realization that he had lost. "You've lost," I said, turning to face him for the last time. "It's over." His face contorted with frustration, but there was nothing he could say now. The truth had been laid bare, and the world saw him for who he truly was. "You'll never be good enough," he muttered. But I wasn't listening. I had already won, and nothing he said could take that away. I walked away, my head held high, feeling lighter with every step. But as I neared the exit, my phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from a distant relative I hadn't heard from in years. "I know what your brother did," the voice on the other end said. "But there's more. You need to hear the full story." A chill ran through me, the weight of those words sinking in. There was more. What could be worse than what I had already uncovered? I stood frozen, trying to process the message. What's worse than everything I've already discovered? I whispered to myself, gripping the phone tightly. The voice on the other end was insistent, urgent even. "Meet me tomorrow, and I'll tell you everything. It's not over." My heart raced, and I felt a knot form in my stomach. Just when I thought I could finally breathe, another secret threatened to drag me back into the past. I didn't know what to expect, but I knew one thing: this fight wasn't finished yet. I took a quiet walk through the estate later, alone with my thoughts. The world around me seemed still, the only sound the rustling of leaves in the wind. The estate that had once held so much pain now felt like a place I could leave behind. I had faced the truth, fought for my inheritance, and walked away with what was mine. But the pain, the betrayal, it still lingered in the corners of my mind. Standing at the edge of the property, I took a deep breath, trying to let go of everything I had carried for so long. "I don't need to carry this anymore," I whispered, the weight of the years slowly lifting off my shoulders. For the first time in so long, I felt free. But the phone call had shaken me. What more was there to learn? What new truth had been hidden from me? I couldn't ignore it, not after everything I'd been through. There was still one last chapter to be written, and I was ready to face it head on. As I turned to leave, I heard my phone buzz once more. I reached into my pocket, my heart racing, unsure of what was waiting for me this time. "This isn't over. Not yet," a lawyer from another state said, his voice serious. "There are unresolved legal issues with the inheritance. You need to know what's coming." The weight of the situation hit me hard, and I felt my stomach drop. Another mystery, another puzzle to solve. "It seems there's still one last chapter left to unfold," I said aloud, my voice steady but full of resolve. "And I'm ready for it."